I spent over a decade fighting for something I believed in, with my time, my money, my heart, all to help bring it back. But I didn't get a thank you. I didn't get a seat at the table. I got erased. And this is what happens when you give everything to a fandom, only to watch everyone else get their full circle moment, and not you. This video is going to discuss my Jimmy Neutron revival project and all of the struggles that came with it. My name is Brittany, and I ran that project for 12 years. I started it in my late 20s. I was 28 in 2011, and I ended it when I was almost 40. I was 39 in April of 2023. I first watched the Jimmy Neutron movie in 2001 when I was 18. I didn't really get into the show itself until 2004. I was flipping through the channels one night and landed on the Love Potion episode. And that was the one that hooked me. The Jimmy and Cindy stuff, obviously. The will they or won't they? The almost kiss. That kind of tension pulled me in. After that, I went back and caught all of the reruns from season 1, then watched everything from season 2 onward, right up until the series ended in 2006. And honestly, I was stubborn. I really wanted this show back, more than anything. I hated that season 3 was it. I wasn't satisfied with how it ended. The final episode felt rushed, and the kiss between Jimmy and Cindy was so short, it was basically blink and you missed it. I felt like there were unresolved character arcs, unfinished storylines, and relationships that deserved more care. So I started thinking, what can I actually do to bring this show back? In 2004, I tried starting a small Facebook group to save it from cancellation, but it didn't gain traction. Eventually, I tried to move on. Then in 2011, I decided to try again, but this time I took it more seriously. I created a Facebook page, a Tumblr blog, a Twitter account, and a petition. I didn't do all of that in one day. It happened over a few weeks, but that was the real beginning of the campaign. Now, before I go any further, I need to be clear with everyone. This is a long story. It may run an hour and a half to 2 hours, and that's why I'm recording this in chunks. You may see me with different hairstyles or clothes. That just means I recorded on different days. I also have 2 disclaimers. If you don't think you can handle what I'm about to talk about, because some of it is serious and some of it is downright ugly, you might want to click away now. There is no happy ending here. It starts hopeful, but it ends tragically. Now, my next disclaimer is a little more serious. I will be moderating every single comment. If you leave a comment attacking me, mocking me, or being cruel in any way, it will not be approved. I will be deleting it. I don't have the energy for that anymore. I'm 42 years old, and I've put up with more than enough crap in this fandom. At this point, I have maybe one person left in the fandom that I still trust. Everyone else I don't, because I've been burned by fans, by collaborators, by people I admired, and by people I thought were there to help. Some of those people went out of their way to take credit for my work and exclude me entirely. And yes, some of the inner circle people I will be talking about are people who once worked on the show. I'm not sugarcoating that. I do, however, want to be clear that I'm not painting everyone who worked on this show with a broad brush. There were a few people I met who were actually very nice and encouraging. I put this video off for months, telling myself I'll do it later, but now is the time. This video is also going to focus on ageism because I experienced it firsthand. I'm an older fan. Most of the fandom is now Gen Z or in their 20s. And despite what people like to say, animation is not treated as for everyone. Once you're over 30, you don't fit the vibe, you don't belong, and you're quietly pushed aside. That didn't happen in the early years of my campaign. Those years were rough, but they were manageable. The ageism crept in during the last 5 years and became much worse in the final 2 or 3. I also made the mistake of asking younger collaborators to help me. I kind of regret that now, because most of what they did was retweet my petition a couple of times and then use my campaign and the fandom to try to build their own resumes. That was never what my campaign was ever about. It was about bringing back a beloved show, about resolution, about the characters, about Jimmy and Cindy. Other people wanted it to be about career building, and once they got what they wanted out of me and the fandom, they discarded me. There were events I should have been part of, and I was excluded. What the inner circle wanted was for me to stay behind the scenes, to keep my mouth shut, and to keep doing the work quietly. Meanwhile, I watched them get opportunities to hang out with the cast members and attend events. I got nothing. I had one of the biggest revival campaigns online, one of the largest, and I was treated brutally. I'm angry, and I have every right to be. I'm tired of staying quiet while others get all the glory, and I get erased. So now I'm telling my story, unfiltered. The first part of this story is the easier part. How I built the campaign. That's where we're going next. So in this part of the video, I'm just going to talk about the campaign and how I rolled it out. I'm going to walk you through how I actually built the revival campaign, because this part, at least at first, was the easy part. In March of 2011, I got to work. I started by creating everything from scratch. The Facebook page, the Twitter account, the Tumblr blog, and the petition. It didn't all happen in one day, but over a few weeks, I slowly laid the groundwork. I was determined to do it right. Getting traction wasn't easy. I tried posting on other pages, hoping to get visibility, but nothing really stuck. So I started running Facebook ads. I didn't have a big income at the time, but in 2012, once I got into more stable work, I started putting more money into it. In the end, I spent about $2,000 on Facebook ads. That's a lot, but this was a grassroots effort. I knew organic likes weren't going to be enough, and I wanted to give this campaign the best possible chance. And for a while, it worked. By 2019, I had nearly 19,000 fans. When I eventually deactivated the Facebook page, I still had over 17,000. On Twitter, I had around 1,700 to 1,800 followers. And the petition, it passed 10,000 signatures before I shut it down. It took me 11 years to reach that milestone. My original goal had been 20,000, but 10,000 was the best I could do. Now, the early years were honestly fun. I got to post updates, stories, fan art, fan fiction, cosplay pictures, whatever I could find. I tried to keep the Tumblr blog going with any show-related news, but eventually the updates became more sporadic. There wasn't always something new to report. Still, I reblogged what I could and kept it alive. And I enjoyed it. I really did. I met fans, made a few new Facebook friends, and even got some people from the show following my page. One or two voice actors followed my Twitter around 2016 or 2017, and it felt like things were finally coming together. I was doing everything I could, staying professional, trying to keep the tone positive and hopeful. But then the campaign took some turns. I tried bringing on moderators early on, people to help manage the Facebook page. That didn't work. They didn't understand how to run it, and I ended up removing them. From that point on, I ran the entire campaign solo. Probably 95% of the time, it was just me. I had no real help. I just did the best I could with the limited time and energy I had. In hindsight, it would have been a lot easier with a team. Most fan campaigns succeed when people work together. I didn't have that. I did it alone. And while that was manageable in the early years, it started getting harder as time went on. Then came the trolls. I dealt with quite a few. Some would drag me into Twitter conversations I had nothing to do with. They'd tag me and other random people just to stir things up and harass me. One person in particular, they were relentless. I ended up having to block them. What made it worse was that people tried to blame me. I was being harassed for something I wasn't even involved in. And then people turned around and tried to make me feel like I had brought it on myself. Eventually, I had to take a break. And actually, I took a lot of breaks for my mental health. I took so many hiatuses from this campaign that I've lost count. It was exhausting. It got to a point where I physically and emotionally couldn't do it anymore, not without stepping away. And every time I left, I felt like I was letting people down. That was the worst part, the guilt. Because the last thing I ever wanted to do was disappoint anyone. There was another troll in the very last year that I was doing this campaign who was obsessed with the Timmy and Cindy pairing from the Power Hour specials. Not the real show, just the crossover stuff. And that person wouldn't let it go. He harassed me for months. I had to block him on every platform. My personal Facebook, my fan page, my personal Twitter, my Revival Twitter, even YouTube. This very YouTube channel that I'm posting this video to is the same one I used for my campaign. I made a few videos back in 2012, but they were mostly slideshows, and they didn't get much traction. I eventually stopped making them. They weren't worth the energy. This kid even started harassing me there, and eventually I had to reach out to one of his parents. It took almost a year to get him off my back. It was awful. And it wasn't just him. There were others. People who were cruel just to be cruel. People who didn't like me or didn't like what I was doing. I still don't fully understand why. The truth is, this campaign drained me. It wore me down. There were days when I couldn't bring myself to post anything. Days when I felt like I had nothing left. But I always came back because something always pulled me back. Some moment, some comment, some hope that it still mattered. That I still mattered. Whenever a voice actor would retweet something, whenever someone left a heartfelt comment, those were the things that made me think, if I just push a little harder, maybe it'll work. There was one time in 2017 where Channel Frederator did a 107 Facts video about Jimmy Neutron, and my campaign actually made the list. It was a small mention, but it meant everything. And it ended up being the only real exposure my work ever got. Just a tiny spotlight, but it gave me hope. Moments like that, or when a cast member would retweet something, these little things kept me going. They made me believe that if I just kept working, if I pushed a little harder, spent a little more time, I could make this happen. I believed that for a very long time. But the truth is, hard work doesn't always pay off. At least not for everyone. And unfortunately, not for me. So I'm going to go into like 2017 because that is when some people affiliated with the show started to take notice. I had some people who worked on the show in many capacities, like a couple, like one or two people who directed it, some writers, some animators who were following my Facebook page. And then a voice actor from the show started following me on Twitter, which was totally unexpected. I wasn't expecting it, but it made me feel very good. And this person at the time was very active. They were like retweeting my stuff all the time, quote tweeting things that they agreed with. They wanted Jimmy and Cindy to get together. And they would share everything, like Tumblr blog things, a whole lot of stuff. It meant a lot, knowing that there was somebody there that seemed to actually care. And that year was a very good year for me. Like, I felt like I was finally gaining some traction. And it gave me hope that I would be able to get this accomplished. Because if I had if with the people that I had backing me, I felt like I could do anything. It gave me a self-esteem boost that I really, really needed. So now we're going to shift from that to 2018. This is a time that felt like momentum, but underneath it, some things were a little off. I didn't see it then, but now it feels really clear. Things started to shift a little more in 2018. I'd been running the campaign for years at that point, including running my Facebook page, my petition, my Twitter, my Tumblr blog, posting and sharing all kinds of stuff. I was exhausted, but I kept going. But some more little glimmers started to show up. A like here, a retweet there, someone followed me, a few more people who were actually part of the show that I admired for years, like the person who started following me in 2017. And it started to feel like maybe they were watching. And after being in the dark for so long, that mattered to me. And at the time, I took all of that as progress, like maybe my campaign was finally breaking through. And I began to feel like this was the part where they finally would start taking me seriously. This is the part where it would start to get real. What I didn't realize was that this kind of attention came with strings and that I would pay for that hope later. But for the moment, I felt grateful. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. And when you've poured years of your life into something, into keeping a fandom alive, that feeling of being seen means everything. Later on in the summer of 2018, I got a message in my email inbox from LinkedIn with the word hello on it. There was no message, no context, no follow up. And it was somebody I recognized, someone from the cast. And I think it was somebody who was following me on Twitter. But I didn't respond. I wasn't sure what to make of it. And then fans started tagging me at random saying they thought this person wanted to talk to me about the petition, but it felt really kind of strange. It didn't really feel like an invitation. It felt more like a performance, like they wanted it to look like outreach, but not actually be outreach. And honestly, looking back, I feel like not responding was the right call. And the reason I say that is because I didn't know if that message was really for me. It didn't feel like it was. It felt like it was for optics so that someone could say later, we tried. But it wasn't a conversation. It was a gesture, a signal, and a check mark. It wasn't really a door opening. And the thing is, if like this person was trying to reach out to me, they could have sent me an email. They could have sent me a direct message on Twitter. And, they could have also typed a longer opening for their LinkedIn request to let me know that they were really interested in my petition and what I was doing and they really wanted to discuss it. And I didn't really get that. I just had all these people tweeting me saying, this person wanted to talk to me. And I was on another hiatus anyway because I was dealing with a whole lot more crap again. So I took some time off to figure it out, gave it some thought. And when I got back, I kind of felt like, well, it just didn't feel right. If it had felt right, I would have known it. And if this person had genuinely tried to reach out in a better way, other than having other people try to reach out for them, like sending me an email or sending me a direct message or something would have went a long way. It would have told me that they really were interested and we could have maybe had a conversation about it. But because they didn't do that, I don't know. It didn't feel right to me. And so I didn't do it. Not long after that, there was a panel. It was a small event at a convention. The cast got together and talked about the show, reminisced about it. And during it, they mentioned my petition. And the only thing is, they didn't mention my name. They didn't mention my story. They just mentioned the petition. At first, I was thrilled. I was in tears. I thought they brought it up. They see it. They see me. But the more I thought about it, the more hollow it felt. Because if I really mattered, if the campaign meant something, why couldn't they say my name? Why not credit the person who started it all? Why did I have to be invisible again? And I started noticing something, a pattern, where my work was retweeted, but my name wasn't said. Where the campaign was praised, but the person behind it was never brought up. Where I was good for optics, but not for credit. I didn't see it as an exclusion at the time. I saw it as a maybe. Maybe they were waiting for the right time. Maybe they didn't want to make it about me. Maybe I just needed to be patient. So I kept on going. I kept pushing the petition, updating my fan page, interacting with fans, promoting the same revival I'd been promoting for years, all because I still believed. I thought if I just keep showing up every day, eventually they'll welcome me in. But unfortunately, they didn't. And I didn't realize it then, but the door was already closed. And the more visible I became, the more I realized I wasn't being invited in. I was being used for appearance. There was one tweet in particular, but this was from 2022, a few years later, probably one of the last years I was doing it. It was a post rallying the fandom for the show's 20th anniversary. This person was part of the inner circle. They tweeted about how they wanted the revival to trend. They tagged cast members, content creators, and a few game developers, and they tagged my revival handle too as well. They said that everyone's efforts don't go unnoticed, but they didn't really say my name. They didn't link the petition. They didn't thank the person who carried the whole thing for 12 years. They lumped me in like background noise. But even then, I was flattered. I thought that, yeah, wow, they included me. But now when I look at that tweet, I see it for what it was. It was the moment that I should have known. They wanted me visible, but silent. Praised, but never present. Acknowledged, but never included. Just a name to tag, not someone to thank. And the truth is, that hurts more than being flat out rejected because I wasn't told no. I was just kept dangling, kept in the wings, used for momentum, and then discarded. 2018 was the beginning of all that. Not of my big moment, but of a very quiet dismissal that I didn't see coming. I actually thought I was getting closer in 2018. But in reality, I was watching the party through the glass. And the further down this rabbit hole we go, you guys are going to see exactly what I'm talking about. I think it was around 2019 when I started to feel like maybe things were finally turning around. People were tagging me more, telling me I should reach out, that I should be involved. And at the time, I believed them. I just wanted to feel like all the years I'd spent building this campaign, all the work, all the hours meant something to someone. And for a little while, it did feel that way. In 2020, I received a tweet about my work that sounded encouraging. Just 4 words, bring us back. It was small, but to me it meant everything. And for the first time, I didn't feel invisible. And around 2018 through about 2022, something I'd been fighting for nearly a decade finally got noticed. My petition. Someone connected to the show shared it publicly many times over the last 4 years. One tweet said something like, "If you love America, sign this." And near Christmas in 2021, they tagged me again. They were trying to make the show trend, and they included me in the post. And for a second, it almost felt like a thank you. Like maybe the tide was changing. But that was it. No message, no invite, no real inclusion. And slowly I started to realize something. My work was being shared. My JN Revival handle was being used, but I wasn't actually being brought in. They liked what I built, but they didn't seem to want the person behind it. And that was the first time it really hit me. Was I being welcomed in, or was I just being kept nearby? Close enough to use, but never close enough to keep. And while this was a little unsettling, I didn't know just how bad it would get until 2022. Now, before we get into this next section, I just want to say something up front. What I'm about to talk about, this next part, it's not easy for me. 2022 and 2023 were very difficult years for me, both emotionally and mentally. And reliving this again, having to go back and walk through it, is going to be really hard. Some of the things I'll be discussing in this section are things that honestly re-traumatize me. This is the part of the story where things started to unravel, where the hope I was holding on to started to crumble, and I didn't even realize it at the time. So please just bear with me. I'll try to stay as composed as I can, but if I sound a little sad or a little angry or just tired, please understand where that's coming from, because these 2 years really dragged me through the mud, and they hurt me in ways I'm still trying to process. We're going to start at the beginning of 2022. On February 7th, a cast member tweeted out a message to fans asking if we still wanted to see Jimmy Neutron come back. The message said, "It's not impossible, not if enough of you care. All it takes is for each of you to start writing letters to the network." They followed that with encouragement. "The address is online. It's just a stamp. If enough people chip in, there might actually be a chance." They also made sure to say that they couldn't confirm anything. No promises, nothing official. But the message was clear. You love this show. You care about it. So if you want it back, now's the time to speak up. The tweet ended on a personal, nostalgic note about how Jimmy Neutron had inspired a generation of online creators, and how maybe one day those fans would get to sit down with their own kids and watch it together. It felt honest. It felt emotional. It felt like something was happening. I remember thinking, maybe this is it. Maybe they're finally listening. Why would they say that if something wasn't going on behind the scenes? But the very next day, February 8th, a fan interview dropped with the creator of Jimmy Neutron. And when he was asked directly about the possibility of a revival, he didn't dodge it. He told the truth. There were talks. They happened back in 2020. But a network executive shut it down. And that was it. The project was dead. And it had been for 2 years. No maybe. No wait and see. No we're working on it. Just, it's over. And here's the part that still hits hard. If the revival died in 2020 and that interview dropped on February 8th, 2022, then why were fans being encouraged to write letters just the day before? Why were we still being told to keep the faith throughout that year? Now, that interview didn't just drop out of nowhere. That truth didn't appear overnight. Somebody, maybe even more than one person, already knew the revival was dead. And still, we were told to fight, to push, to believe, to keep the momentum going. But we were never given the truth. And in the end, the only person who gave us transparency was the creator. He didn't sugarcoat it. He didn't tease us. He didn't pretend there was hope when there wasn't. He just said it. The show was gone. The talks had ended, and they had been for a long time. Everyone else stayed quiet, let fans keep believing, let me keep believing. Even if it was unintentional, we were sold false hope. Looking back now, this was the moment I should have walked away. This was the warning sign, the red flag, the point where I should have said enough. But I didn't. I stayed another year, still believing there was a reason to keep going, still believing I might be included, still believing that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late. But I shouldn't have. And the things that happened after this, the silence, the erasure, the way I was pushed out, will show you exactly why I should have left much sooner than I did. By the spring of 2022, I was feeling discouraged, burned out. I had been mulling over the idea of leaving the campaign after the news broke in February that the revival talks in 2020 had fallen through. I'd been running this campaign for over a decade, and I was starting to wonder if it was even still worth it. In April, I reached out to some collaborators, people who had been working closely with the cast and the crew, and I asked if there was still a reason to keep going. And surprisingly, what I got back was encouragement. They told me my work was outstanding, that they had followed my campaign for years, that it had made a difference, and that they'd be happy to help if they could. I told them they had my full permission to use my revival materials to help promote my effort however they saw fit. It felt good once again to be seen, to be valued, to think that maybe all of this still had a purpose. And so I stayed. Even though I had every reason to step back, I stayed because I believed the people I trusted were telling the truth. But looking back now, I'm not sure why I stayed. Because the revival talks had already failed. And as you'll see a little later on, what came next wasn't a revival. It was something else entirely. Okay, I'm going to move ahead to the spring and summer of 2022. I still have a lot of ground to cover before I get to the fall and eventually the main event that happened at the end of the year. In the meantime, my petition was still getting shared. Signatures started climbing again. A couple of live streams actually gave me a little hope, like maybe something was stirring behind the scenes after all. Some cast members and influencers continued to discuss the revival efforts on social media. Then came the tweets. Not just from fans or cast members, but from the network themselves. One of them literally said, "Got a blast," with rocket emojis surrounding the tweet. And of course, that got people talking. There were others too, random screenshot prompts or nostalgia posts, all timed around the 20th anniversary. And then we did it. We got Jimmy Neutron trending for its 20th anniversary. It wasn't easy. It took hours of effort, organizing, retweeting, and pushing hashtags. But as a community and a team, we made it happen. We made the algorithm care. And for just one day, on July 20th, 2022, it felt like the fandom had power again. Like I had power again. But looking back, it was apparent that whole summer felt like emotional bait. Every time something almost happened, it didn't. Every time the door cracked open, it slammed shut again. And the hardest part, I was still pushing the petition, still promoting the show, still doing everything I could to earn my seat at the table, while the inner circle gave me just enough to keep hoping. But it didn't feel like progress. And I didn't realize it at the time, but while I was busy keeping the campaign alive, some other social media influencers on the inside were quietly taking my place. In October of 2022, I discovered some petition signatures I received from several cast members, which brought me great hope. This hope gave me the courage to send an email to one of them, someone who followed all of my pages, someone I truly believed cared. I wasn't writing fan mail. I was reaching out as the person who had been running the Jimmy Neutron revival campaign by myself for over a decade, since 2011. I built it from the ground up, and I was still at it even after all those years, even though I was exhausted, physically, emotionally, mentally. In that email, I poured everything out. I explained that I was nearly 40 now, that I'd spent most of my 20s and 30s keeping this campaign alive for a show that never got the ending it deserved, especially not for the two lead characters who needed it most. And I was still holding on, still fighting for it, even though by that point I was struggling just to function. I told them about the fatigue I'd been dealing with since April, how it left me drained, barely able to get through the day. I told them about the depression, about how hard it had become to interact with people, and I apologized for not being more present. Not because I wanted pity, but because I still believed they deserved honesty. I still believed we were on the same side. And more than that, I offered help. I literally said, if there's anything I can do to help, let me know. I gave them my phone number, my email, my LinkedIn, my Facebook, everything. I gave them access. I gave them trust. Because even after everything, I still wanted to be part of it, any of it. That was the email I sent. Now let me tell you about the email I got back. It was cold, short, about a paragraph. It vaguely thanked me for the lovely email and for all my efforts to bring the show back. Then it said that the network was still considering it, but that there was no new information. That's it. Not a single word about my health, not a word about the depression, not a word about the 10 years I had poured into this, not even a thank you for offering to help. No acknowledgement, no compassion, no substance. It was distant. It was dismissive. It felt like a form letter. And then came the line that broke me. It casually mentioned that a reunion was already happening in December at a comic convention with filming, and that trailers were being made to pitch the cast to other conventions. That was the first I'd heard of it. No heads up, no invite, no, we'd love to include your campaign materials. Just one sentence slipped in like it didn't matter, like I didn't matter. And here's the thing, I don't believe the person I emailed even wrote that reply. The tone was off. It didn't even sound like them. It felt filtered, sanitized, controlled, like someone else was answering for them, someone managing the optics, someone deciding who got access and who didn't. And that was the moment the truth hit me. I wasn't just being left out of the loop. I was being kept out. This wasn't an oversight. It wasn't a miscommunication. It seemed to be intentional. It didn't matter how long I'd been doing this. It didn't matter that I'd carried the revival campaign alone for over 10 years. It didn't matter that I'd spent thousands of hours, dollars, and emotional energy trying to bring this show back. Because behind the scenes, it appeared that a decision had already been made. I had been written out, and that email made it perfectly clear. I was never going to be invited in. Even after that reply, I didn't quit. Even after realizing the panel was happening without me, even after not being invited, even after being brushed off in a single sentence, I still believed I could contribute, because I thought, if I can't be there physically, maybe I can still leave a part of me behind. So in late November, just before the panel, I threw myself into the final stretch of petition cleanup. I let my followers know that I was prepping this for inclusion at the LA Comic Con panel and for submission to the network at some point. I stayed up for 3 nights in a row, editing, cross-checking, fixing duplicates, removing spam. It was exhausting, but I did it. I brought the petition down to a verified total of 10,194 legitimate signatures after scrubbing out nearly 1,000 fake names and duplicates. I cleaned and formatted over 1,500 real comments, personal, thoughtful messages from fans who still believed too. This wasn't a copy-paste job. This was real work, hours of it. And I did it knowing full well I wouldn't even be there to see it presented. I then posted publicly on my Revival campaign's Facebook and Twitter accounts that I couldn't attend. I told my followers the truth. I was between jobs. I couldn't afford the travel. It broke my heart to say it, but I was honest. Because I still wanted to show up for the fandom, even if I couldn't show up for the cameras. And I thought maybe the petition could still be included somehow. I emailed everything to the panel organizer, who was also close to the cast. I said, I've got binders, I've got ink, I'll print it, mail it, do whatever it takes if there's a way to display it. I was still trying, still holding out hope, still believing in the people I thought were on my side. And their response? They told me I was a dedicated worker and that my work was incredible. They said, your hard work won't be for nothing. They promised to forward it to the cast. they told me to watch the live stream where I would see my efforts pay off. And for a moment, I felt hope. We're now going to move ahead to after Thanksgiving, November 29th, 2022, just 4 days before the panel. I want to read you guys something I received that day, word for word, in a direct message I got on social media from someone in the cast. It was framed like a warm invite, like a reward for everything I'd done. But let's take a look at what it actually said. Did you hear the news? Any plans to be in LA this weekend? If so, swing by the signing area after the reunion panel and introduce yourself in person. I have a signed photo for you. Also, if you can help us get the word out about our improv show to your loyal followers, that would be a big help. Here's the promo image we're using. Thanks. Let me give you a quick geography lesson. I live in Louisville, Kentucky. LA is over 2,000 miles away. That's not just swing by if you're in the area. That's a cross-country trip. I didn't have a couple grand in my back pocket. I didn't have money for flights, hotels, badges, food, or transportation just to show up and say hi. So let's be honest. That message was never about seeing me. The real ask wasn't about inviting me to the panel. It wasn't about honoring my work. It was about using my platform, again, for free. They wanted me to promote their comedy improv show, the one that happened after the reunion panel later on that evening. That's why they reached out. Not to include me, not to thank me, but to ask for something. One more thing from the person that was already being left behind. And when I responded, when I told them the truth, that I couldn't afford to come, that I was heartbroken about it, they didn't even reply. No follow-up, no offer to send the photo, no we'll miss you, no acknowledgement at all. Just silence. I was ghosted. And then a few days later, it was Saturday, December 3rd, 2022, a date that should have meant something. I woke up that morning feeling heavy before my feet even hit the floor. My inbox was quiet. My phone was quiet. My feeds were quiet. But I wasn't quiet. My heart was pounding like a warning sign in a room no one else could hear. I kept thinking, maybe the stream hasn't started yet. Maybe it'll pop up any minute. Maybe someone will go live from the audience. Maybe I'll see my work on the screen behind them, like they said. I kept giving the world one more maybe. But after every refresh gave me the same answer. Nothing. No live stream. No shaky fan footage. No grainy cell phone clips uploaded in excitement. No hashtagged crowd moment where someone said, "Hey, look at this." Just silence. And that silence destroyed me. I cried in waves that day. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind. The kind where your face burns and your chest caves in and you're trying not to make a sound because you're still holding on to dignity even while your heart is disintegrating. I kept thinking about all the people who had cheered the campaign on over the years. The fans who signed, the ones who commented, the ones who told me not to quit when it got hard. And I felt like I had let them down. Not the cast, not the organizers, not the insiders, the fans, the real ones. I felt sick with guilt. I felt like a fraud for hoping. I felt like a coward for not being able to afford a plane ticket. I felt like someone who had failed a mission she never should have been on alone to begin with. It ate me alive. I paced the room between crying spells like a ghost haunting her own house. I kept whispering myself, "You idiot, you really thought you mattered?" Then I'd stop and think, "No, I mattered to the fans." Then I'd crumble again. It was like a slow DuPont chart of my soul, dividing and subdividing all the ways I hurt. I kept checking every hour, every app, every post, every corner of the internet I could think of, because I thought I'd see the moment live. I thought the payoff would be public. But the payoff never came. What came was a day of grieving something that wasn't even dead yet, a funeral for my own hope. And then I had to wait. Not hours, not days, weeks. 2 full weeks before the panel video dropped on YouTube. And when it finally aired, what I saw and what I didn't, that's when I finally learned the truth. I'll be honest, I really thought they were going to say my name, even just once. I thought I'd hear it in the thank yous at the end. I thought maybe they'd show the petition, just a slide, maybe a sentence. I thought I'd get 5 seconds of acknowledgement. Because after everything, after the years, the outreach, the effort, the electronic copy of my petition I submitted, the version I cleaned up at 3 a.m., I thought there was still room for gratitude. I didn't expect a parade. I wasn't waiting for some confetti drop and a medal. I just thought maybe they'd say something. Something like, "Hey, there's a fan who kept this alive when no one else did. Here's a petition that got 10,000 people to raise their hands. Here's someone who believed in this enough to never let it die." That's all I wanted. To know I hadn't done it for nothing. To feel like the work mattered. To feel like I mattered. But what I thought I'd see was not what I saw. Now, before I say anything else about the panel itself, I want to pause for a moment, because one of the cast members who appeared there, someone whose voice meant so much to this show and to this fandom, is no longer with us. And this panel was one of the last times we ever saw him alive on camera. I need you to know that I see that. I feel that, and I don't take it lightly. Let's take a moment of silence to honor this beloved voice actor. I will watch the time. Now, what this panel did and what it didn't do still matters. Because what happened on that stage didn't just reflect who was in the room, it reflected who was erased from the room. Here's what actually happened at the LA Comic Con Jimmy Neutron Anniversary panel on December 3rd, 2022. It opened with cast and crew introductions. Fans were invited up to audition as characters for fun. They read a retro episode script live on stage. Then they held a short Q&A. There was no official announcement, no revival reveal, no forward momentum. It was billed as a reunion, and maybe for some people it was. I watched the video, start to finish, and here's what I didn't see. There was no mention of the fans who kept it alive. There was no mention of my campaign that brought tens of thousands of people together in 2011, long before anyone else got in the game. And despite promises, my petition with over 10,000 signatures was never shown. Not on a screen, not on a banner, not even as a footnote. My name wasn't said, my work wasn't honored, and the revival movement I built, the one that helped to make this panel possible, was treated like it never existed. Now, for the record, I didn't grow up with Jimmy Neutron. I watched it in college. I was already an adult when I fell in love with this show, with its heart, its humor, its potential. I gave more than a decade of my life trying to help it get the closure it deserved, and in total, I gave the fandom itself almost 20 years of my life. This wasn't just a cartoon to me, it was my identity, it was my passion project, and I was the one who kept going when nobody else did. So when that panel happened and it skipped over all of that and it rewrote the narrative without any mention of what came before, I didn't just feel left out, I felt erased. And the strangest part is, the audience was mostly in their 20s. They didn't know the history. They couldn't have known what was missing. But at least a couple of the people on that stage did, including the few that signed my petition. They knew. They saw what I built, and they let it disappear. That's what still keeps me up sometimes. Not the silence, but the choice. While this was called a reunion, they didn't quite say who it was for. They didn't say a word about the decade that came before. Didn't name the fans who carried it through the silence. Didn't even hint that a revival campaign ever existed. There were no mentions, no nods, no thank you for keeping this alive. Not even a single sentence that acknowledged the people who never stopped fighting for this show. They had the spotlight, they had the stage, they had the chance to honor all of it, but they said nothing. It wasn't just a missed opportunity, it felt like a deliberate erasure, because most of them knew. They saw it, they were tagged in it, and a few of them shared in it. They watched it happen in real time. But when the lights came up that day, they acted like none of it ever happened. That's not a reunion, that's a rewrite. And I just sat there watching, waiting for one word, one nod, one thread that tied it all back, but it never came. And when the panel ended, I wasn't just heartbroken, I was invisible. I tried to convince myself it wasn't that bad, told myself maybe they just ran out of time, maybe the cast had no say in what made the panel, Maybe someone else handled the planning and it just slipped through the cracks. But when the footage went up online, I realized no, this wasn't an oversight. It was exactly what it looked like. A reunion that left out the people who actually held the show together. A celebration that never once acknowledged the revival efforts that kept the flame alive. Not even in passing. Not even in the smallest way. Let's talk about something I haven't really said out loud until now. By the time the panel happened, something had become painfully clear. This revival wasn't about passion anymore. It had become pay to play. Pay to play, by definition, means access isn't earned through time, effort, or impact. It's bought with money, connections, clout. You're either invited because you know the right people, or you're allowed in because you paid. If you were in the right chats and the right circles, you were included. If you weren't, you paid. Literally. Autograph bundles, raffle prizes, paid cameos, panel tickets, travel costs, $500 here, $1,000 there. Even the fan experiences had price tags. Meanwhile, some people got comped, got invited, got backstage access. Not because they built something, but because they belonged to someone. And I want to be very clear about something. I wasn't mad that I couldn't go to LA. I was sad that it had become something I had to buy my way into. After more than a decade of building this project from scratch, I wasn't asking for money. I wasn't asking for perks. I was just hoping that the people I supported might say, "You're a part of this. We want you there." But instead, it felt like there was a velvet rope. And on the other side were people with the right usernames, the right clout, the right access. And I was standing outside, not because I didn't care enough, but because I didn't pay enough. And after everything I had already given, my time, my heart, my voice, my grief, I didn't think I should have to pay just to be seen. So when the panel finally happened, it didn't feel like a celebration. It felt like a premiere I wasn't invited to, because by then I already knew. The guest list had been finalized, and I was never on it. I'm now going to discuss something people don't like to admit happens in fan spaces, especially ones that claim to be for everyone. Let's talk about ageism. Ageism in fandom isn't always direct or obvious. It's the quiet, systemic way older fans are sidelined. Not because their work isn't valuable, but because their presence doesn't fit the aesthetic. It's being overlooked, dismissed, or excluded in favor of someone newer, trendier, or younger, even when you've done the heavy lifting. In fan spaces that thrive on youth culture and fast-moving trends, ageism shows up as silence, erasure, and the subtle message: you don't belong here anymore. Ageism in fandom isn't always loud. It doesn't always show up as an insult or a comment. Most of the time, it shows up in silence, in who's allowed to speak and who's quietly pushed aside. And it showed up everywhere in my experience with the Jimmy Neutron fandom and my revival campaign. I wasn't someone who just discovered this show later and decided to hop on the hype train. I was there from the beginning. I started my campaign in 2011 when I was 28. I built a Facebook page with 18,000 followers. I created the petition. I ran the Twitter and the Tumblr. I organized the graphics. I kept things alive when no one else did. For over a decade, I was the one pushing this fandom forward. But when the so-called revival movement actually came, when the streams, panels, and other online events started happening, I wasn't invited in. I was pushed out, and that wasn't by accident. I kept thinking, maybe they just forgot. Maybe someone would say my name. Maybe they'd hold up the petition I poured my heart into and say, this is where it all started. But no one did. Not once. I wasn't asked to speak at the LA Comic Con panel. I wasn't offered a virtual appearance. I wasn't publicly thanked. I wasn't even named. My petition, which I was told would be displayed, it wasn't. My contributions, ignored. And after 12 years, I got ghosted. That is what ageism looks like in real time. Not some teenager yelling, "Okay, boomer." It's the quiet erasure of someone who gave everything because they didn't fit the vibe. Instead of collaboration, I got tone policed. I was told to watch the streams, to wait and see, to be grateful. I wasn't being difficult. I was asking for transparency, for inclusion, for respect. But because I wasn't the fun, bubbly, hyper online fan they wanted, I became inconvenient. That's how it works. You don't even have to be told you're too old for this. They just stop answering your messages. I kept trying to tell myself it wasn't personal, but how could it not be? I gave them the map, and they walked right past me to the destination. They were happy to benefit from my campaign when it helped the optics, when it showed the fandom was alive. But when it came time to celebrate it, to credit it, they kept my work and erased my name. That's what ageism looks like in fandom spaces. It's not just about numbers. It's about who's allowed to matter. And for a fandom built on nostalgia, that should have meant me. Instead, I was treated like I was already part of the past. But I wasn't. I was still here. They just didn't want to see me. They didn't even have to say the words. The silence said it for them. Now let's talk about something that doesn't get brought up a lot. Not publicly anyway. Let's talk about fandom politics. Not drama, not petty disagreements, but the quiet power dynamics that decide who gets heard and who gets hidden. Because that's what politics really are in fan spaces. They're not about who loves the show the most. They're about who's allowed to lead the conversation. Fandom politics aren't loud. They don't always show up as arguments or call-outs. Most of the time, they show up as who gets the mic, who gets the invites, who gets validated, no matter how recent their arrival, and who gets punished just for existing outside the circle. It's not about contribution. It's about connection. Not what have you done for this fandom, but whose side are you on? When revival talk started picking up, I didn't expect a spotlight. I didn't need applause. I just wanted to help. But I wasn't part of the inner circle. I wasn't part of the right group chat. I wasn't easy to control. I asked questions. I had boundaries. I held people accountable. And that was enough to become a problem. Suddenly, I wasn't just not included, I was a risk. I was someone to keep on the outside just in case I said too much. I watched people who had barely been there, people who hadn't fought for this, who didn't even know the history, got lifted up like they'd always been the voice of the fandom. And me, I was told to wait, to calm down, to stop asking. It wasn't about what I'd done, it was about who I wasn't. This wasn't some influencer campaign. It wasn't PR. It was my heart. For over a decade, I kept the fire going. But when fandom becomes political, passion stops mattering. It doesn't matter how much you love the show. If you don't align with the right people, you'll always be too much, too loud, too emotional, too inconvenient. I didn't want power. I didn't want clout. I just wanted to contribute, to be part of what I helped build, to be seen, not because I was popular, but because I showed up over and over. But in a fandom run by politics, even that was too much to ask. If it was really about the fans, then what was I? Circling back to the October 2022 email I received from a voice actor who said the panel would be taken on tour, there was no tour in 2023. It went to LA in 2022, and it stopped there. I guess that was never really the plan, just something that sounded good in a message. Just enough to keep me still. And you have to ask yourself, why say it at all? Why tell me it would go on tour only for it to stop after one city? Why give that kind of reassurance if there was never any real plan to follow through? It didn't cost anything to say, but it cost me everything to believe it. Because I waited. I held on. I stayed quiet, just in case. And that silence, it served them more than it ever served me. In the weeks after the panel, I kept watching. Social media lit up with praise. People calling it a heartwarming reunion, sharing selfies and quotes from the stage like it had brought the fandom back together. But I didn't feel brought back. I didn't feel seen at all. And then I started noticing who was being seen. The ones who'd only joined the fandom recently. The ones already in those inner circles. The ones with clout or connections or cosplay photos. They were the ones getting the nods, the shout outs, the thank you for keeping this alive. It was like they rewrote the history in real time. Like everything that came before 2020 had just been edited out. And slowly, I stopped trying to explain it away. Because when I looked at the posts, when I looked at the replies, when I looked at who got included and who didn't, I realized I wasn't invisible. I was being ignored on purpose. In early 2023, I didn't announce anything. I didn't make a scene. I just stopped showing up as much. I continued to log in and post when I felt up to it. Other days, I would scroll, but not comment, and watch, but not share. At first, I told myself that I was tired, that maybe a little space would help. But the truth is, I was starting to feel like a ghost in the very space I helped build. The likes were slowing, the messages were quieter, and the people I used to know weren't there anymore. Or if they were, they weren't looking at me. I wasn't tagged. I wasn't thanked. I wasn't even part of the conversations. And I started asking myself the question no one wants to ask. If I disappeared completely, would anyone notice? I kept the pages open, kept the lights on, but in my heart, the doors are already half closed. I didn't call it a retirement, not yet, but something inside me had already started to shut down. And looking back now, I think I was already grieving. Grieving the version of me that used to believe this mattered. Grieving the hope I used to wake up with. I kept logging in, kept pretending, but hope started to feel heavier than silence. And silence was all I got in return. In early January 2023, a month after the Comic-Con panel, I saw a post on Twitter about a charity raffle, a live stream, 2 cast members and a moderator playing a Jimmy Neutron video game. I gave $20 on the day of the event. My name showed up on screen when the donation went through. The moderator saw it, said it out loud. There were prize packs you could win. I picked one at random. But I wasn't trying to win. I gave because it was a cause I deeply believed in. And maybe, deep down, I still wanted to believe I wasn't invisible. That I still mattered. That someone would see me again. A few weeks later, a strange package showed up at my door. No warning, no note, no email. Just a yellow envelope from LA. I didn't know what it was. I had to ask around. Eventually, someone told me I'd won one of the prize packs. But I'd watched most of the stream, and I'd never heard my name announced as a winner. No moment, no acknowledgement, nothing. The package gave me a flicker of hope for about 10 seconds, and then I felt sick. Because it didn't feel like I'd won anything. It felt like I was being handled, managed. Like they were tossing me autographs, not out of care, but because I was still there. Still visible, still inconvenient. It felt like damage control. They knew I was still watching, still holding on, still believing. And they sent me an envelope to keep me quiet. And for a while it worked. Because I didn't want to believe it was performative. I didn't want to believe they were capable of that. But I never opened those autographs. They remain sealed in that envelope to this day. Because deep down I knew, and I still know, that it wasn't a thank you. It was a muzzle. A transaction disguised as kindness. And I wasn't a person to them. I was a problem to contain. Now I want to talk about something else that happened. Something I didn't always have the words for, but I felt it the whole time. Gatekeeping. It wasn't loud. It wasn't obvious, but it was everywhere. Gatekeeping in fandom isn't just someone saying you're not welcome. It's someone deciding you don't get to matter. It's invisible lines, unspoken rules. It's people building a circle and choosing not to include you. Gatekeeping says you can be a fan, but you can't be part of this. You can cheer us on, but don't expect to stand with us. It doesn't happen through insults. It happens through invitations that never come, through projects you never hear about until it's too late, through group chats you're not added to, through recognition that skips over you like you were never there at all. Gatekeeping is when someone takes a space that should be shared, should be open, and quietly turns it into something closed, something curated, something controlled. And in fandom spaces, that control often lives with a handful of people, the ones with access, with proximity, with just enough clout to decide who gets let in and who gets left out. Sometimes they smile while doing it. Sometimes they say thank you. Sometimes they pretend it was a mistake. But it's not. Gatekeeping is when the people in charge of the story, the panel, the stream, the spotlight know what you've done, see what you've built, and choose to move forward without you anyway. Not because you weren't good enough, but because you weren't theirs. Because you didn't fit their version of the narrative. Because you were too outspoken, too real, too early, too old, too much of a threat to the image they were trying to curate. Gatekeeping is when fandoms claim to be for everyone, but operate like private clubs, where entrance isn't earned, it's granted, and only to the people who pass the vibe check. It's the difference between we see you and we'll use what you made, but not your name. It's not being told no. It's never even being told at all. And for me, it looked like this. There were people who got in, got invited, got seen, got close to the cast, got handed the mic. And then there was me. I didn't get in because I wasn't in the right group chat. I didn't get in because I didn't play the game, because I wasn't shiny, wasn't marketable, wasn't new. I was the one who built it, but I wasn't allowed to stand next to it when it finally came to life. There were people who got flown out, who got to take pictures and hang out backstage, who got real moments with the people I had looked up to for years. And I got a bundle of autographs from a raffle I didn't even win. No announcement, no congratulations, just a quiet envelope in the mail. and I never even opened it. It's still sealed, still sitting there, because I already knew what it meant. It wasn't a gift. It wasn't a thank you. It was a consolation prize for someone they never planned to include. While others were out there laughing with the cast, making memories, getting tagged, getting seen. That's what gatekeeping looked like for me. It looked like people being handed opportunities because they were fun to be around, because they were easier to manage, because they didn't ask questions, because they were the right fit, and I wasn't. I didn't fit the aesthetic. I didn't have the connections. I didn't have someone whispering my name in the right circles. So I got left behind. Not because I didn't care, not because I didn't do the work, but because I wasn't allowed in. They let me build the foundation, but they made sure I wasn't there for the ribbon cutting. They took the house I made and closed the door behind them. And the cruelest part, they didn't just forget me. They chose not to let me in. They used my campaign as proof the fandom was alive, then locked me out of the celebration, like I didn't deserve to be there, like I wasn't one of them. They didn't erase what I built. They just made sure no one saw who built it. That's gatekeeping. That's what it looks like when a fandom pretends to be for everyone, but only rolls out the welcome mat for the people they already picked. And after everything I gave, the years, the grief, the fire I kept alive, when no one else was watching, I was never even on the list. And in this fandom, it happened with a smile. This next segment I'm about to discuss, quite honestly, I don't even know why I did it. Not really. It was early February 2023, not long after I got that package of autographs in the mail. The one that felt like a half-hearted gesture, like a thank you for staying quiet. And something in me cracked. So I made a decision. I would send everything I had left. Not online, not in a post, in a box. I mailed a binder to a voice actor I admired, someone I still wanted to believe in. But it wasn't just a binder, it was my heart. I bought a heavy-duty hole punch for the stacks, a thick binder, extra printer ink, lots of paper. I stayed up late, reformatting everything one final time. I printed the entire Change.org petition, all 10,194 signatures. I included every comment. I organized it into clean, readable sections, page after page. And then I wrote a letter, a long, personal, aching letter, not just about the project, but about the years, the work, the love, the grief, the cost. How much it meant to me, how much it had taken. I printed that too and tucked it into the front pocket. It took 2 weeks to finish. It cost about $70 for the paper, the ink, the binder, the shipping. But it wasn't about the money. It was about giving this one last chance, one last offering. I mailed it quietly. No announcement. I mailed it because some small, stubborn part of me still believed it might matter. That if someone opened it, if they really read it, they'd finally see me. Because that binder was everything I couldn't say out loud. It was everything I ever wanted this to be. It was me, and I gave it away. Before I move on, let's recap. I mailed the binder in February 2023 as a final gesture, a physical reminder that I still believed in something. Something that said, even after everything, I still care. But weeks went by. No live stream, no video call, no reply. Just silence. And the silence stayed. So I kept going, or tried to. I still posted. I still encouraged others. Sometimes I'd get responses, real ones maybe. Other times they felt filtered, polished. Kind perhaps, but not for me. Then I started to notice things. My tone was being softened. My messages were being corrected. My presence allowed, but only in someone else's version of the story. That's when I knew. I wasn't leading anymore. I was being managed. I didn't plan to retire on April Fool's Day. I just got tired of being tolerated, tired of being invisible in a space I built, tired of waiting for someone, anyone to say, thank you for keeping this alive. So I finally announced my retirement. A few fans replied. Some said they were sad to see me go. Most didn't say anything at all. The cast said nothing. No thank you tweet, no shout out, no tag, not even a goodbye. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't just stepping away from the project. I was being written out of it. I gave them my time, my energy, my grief, my love. And when I was gone, I wasn't celebrated. I wasn't acknowledged. I was erased. Looking back now, I thought staying quiet would protect the project, but it only protected the people guarding the project from me. After I stepped away, I thought maybe things would finally quiet down, that without the campaign consuming my every breath, I might finally get to rest. But the silence that came after wasn't peace. It was a void. No messages, no thank yous, no one checking in. Just this cold, echoing nothing, like I'd been wiped clean from the story. And without the campaign, I didn't know who I was anymore. For 12 years, this was more than just a project. It was my identity, my routine, my reason to wake up in the morning. Every milestone, every post, every plan, it shaped how I saw myself. And when that stopped, so did I. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel free. I still felt erased. People think walking away ends the pain, but it doesn't. It just strips away the distraction until all that's left is the grief you've been holding off for years. The rage that no one warned you would still be waiting. The exhaustion so deep, it doesn't even feel like tiredness anymore, just bone deep emptiness. And the worst part, I didn't even expect anything better, because by then, I already knew the truth. I was never part of their vision, just a piece of the scaffolding they climbed to get there. So I told myself, this was the ending. Not the one I wanted, not the one I earned, but at least it was done. I started trying to live again, quietly, privately. Some days I felt okay, some days I didn't, but I was learning to carry it. And then, almost a year later, they reached out. A name I knew, a message I didn't expect. And the moment I opened it, I knew exactly what it was. By early 2024, I was trying to move on. I really was. But it was hard. I was still hurting, still carrying all of it. And then, out of nowhere, I got an email from the voice actor I'd mailed my binder to nearly a year earlier. At first, my heart jumped. For a second, I thought, maybe they read it. Maybe they saw me. But then I started reading. The tone was off. The wording was strange. It felt ghostwritten, polished, performed, not personal. There are a few key points from this letter I will read word for word. The rest I will paraphrase. It started out with a New Year's greeting, and then went on to inform me that they had just received my binder and letter from their agent. That's how it began. Like I had sent them something casual. Like this wasn't a binder I'd poured my heart into and mailed 11 months earlier. Then came the first quote that stopped me in my tracks. Wow, your efforts are really impressive. My family all looked at your work, and we were very impressed with all you have done. And that was the first moment I could tell that this was written by someone else. I didn't send this to their family. I sent it to them. It wasn't a group activity. It wasn't a family scrapbook. It was a gift from me to the person who meant something to me. That line made it feel like it had been passed around like an interesting object, not something personal. Then came this. I'm not sure when you sent it to me, but the letter was dated February 6th, 2023, and the petition is dated November 27th, 2022. I still don't know why that was included. Why point that out? It felt bureaucratic, like I'd sent in a form and they were cataloging the timestamps, not like someone reading something that came from my heart. And then came the part that really knocked the air out of me. They told me that they appreciated what someone else did to help with my effort and remarked on how great of a person they were. And just like that, in a reply that should have been about the work I did, credit was given to someone else. Not just mentioned, praised, elevated, as if they were the one who made it all happen. And in that moment, I just thought, there it is again. Even here, even now. Then they said this. I sent a video message to the creator of Jimmy Neutron and showed him your notebook and letter. I thought he would be just as impressed as I was. But there was no quote, no reaction, no word from him, just the name drop, which by that point didn't mean much to me. Because if he had really seen it, why didn't I get to hear what he thought? Finally, I was told that because they were just a voice actor, they didn't really have any pull at the network. However, they said they would reach out to their contacts and show them the results of my petition. I honestly didn't know what to do with that. Because the binder wasn't sent to pitch something. It wasn't a business proposal. It wasn't a campaign tactic. I'm going to say this again. This was a gift. So I didn't understand why it was being framed like something to show around, like a file to pass along the chain. That was the first reply I got. And it didn't sound like them. Not like the person I used to admire. Not the person I mailed that binder to. It took nearly a year before I heard back. But when I did, I didn't feel seen. I felt invisible all over again. I sat with that email for a while. I didn't know how to feel. It didn't sound like them. But after all that silence, part of me still wanted to believe it meant something. So I wrote back. I told them I was doing okay, that I'd sent the binder in February 2023 and closed the petition the November before. I said I wasn't sure it would ever reach them. I also told them I'd stepped away from the revival project the April before. That by then, I felt like there was nothing left I could do. Like I'd given everything I had. And I admitted something hard. That I didn't feel like anyone really cared. Not anymore. And I wasn't sure if I'd ever come back to it again. I said I was 40 now. And I was starting to wonder if maybe this was as far as I'd ever get. I thanked them for their message, said I appreciated what they shared, even if it didn't sound like them, even if it didn't feel personal. I ended it simply, told them I hoped we could stay in touch. That was it. Not long after my reply, I got a second message. It was meant to be encouraging. It said something had been done with my work and that it had been received in a positive way. That was the gist of it. There were no real details, no confirmation, no follow-up. Just another vague update. And then it ended with this. hope that lifts your spirits and lets you know your labor has been viewed positively. Viewed positively. That was the line that stayed with me. Not appreciated, not honored, just viewed. I didn't feel lifted. I felt dismissed. Like all that time, 12 years of work, had been reduced to a sentence that didn't mean anything anymore. It didn't feel like praise. It felt like management. Like someone was trying to keep me calm instead of trying to actually connect. And by that point, it was too late. And if I'm being honest, I don't even think the voice actor I mailed that binder to ever really read it. The tone didn't sound like someone who had seen what was inside. It didn't feel like a personal response. It felt like something passed along, like someone else looked at it. Maybe skimmed it, maybe didn't, and then sent me back a performance dressed up as praise. And that hurts more than anything. Because what I sent wasn't just paper, it was 12 years. And it was mine. Now, I know a lot of fans are probably wondering what happened with my petition, and I want to be completely honest with everyone. I never sent it off to the network. The reason being is that after I saw the 2022 LA Comic Con panel, I honestly didn't feel like I had the backing and support I thought I did. I didn't really feel like anybody cared about this except for just me and the handful of fans who were following me on social media. It broke my heart. I thought for 12 years that I had a following, and maybe for a while I did. But without backing and support, I knew my petition wasn't going to go anywhere at Nickelodeon other than a trash can. So I saw no point in mailing it. This sums up the entirety of everything I wanted to share regarding my experiences with my revival campaign. I was not only forced out of my campaign, I was also kicked out of the fandom as well by people half my age who did not want to share the spotlight with anyone or collaborate with me whatsoever. I strongly advise anyone who wants to run a Save My Show campaign or a revival campaign to not do it at all. The likelihood of your show coming back is very, very slim, and it only happens in the rarest of situations. But if you are adamant on running a campaign, do not do it alone. I had to fight all of my own battles, which I lost most of the time. I had no one there to back me up. Literally no one had my back. You need to have a group of friends who share a similar passion for the show you enjoy, working together as a team. If I'd had that, I would not have had to face a lot of these battles alone, and I may have even been able to get a lot more accomplished. Even if that wasn't the case, at least I would have had some people who were there to help me. I have something I need to say to cast members and inner circle people. Mr. Rogers once said that there are 3 tools for being successful. They are be kind, and be kind. A little kindness would have gone a long way in showing that I mattered, not just as a fan, but as a collaborator and a friend. I really wish you guys had shown me more support and at the very least given me credit for the years of work I put in. All I wanted was for someone out there to know that they cared. My heart is still broken over that. This fandom has become a clique that you have to belong to in order to matter. The 25th anniversary events are a prime example of this. They are pay to play in that you either have to live in the LA area or have thousands of dollars to attend the events, and then you have to be part of the inner circle in order to feel included. This is why I haven't attended any events at all. As far as I'm concerned, I don't owe cast members or anyone else in this fandom anything. I gave my soul and my hard labor to it for nearly 20 years as a collaborator, a social media personality, an influencer, and superfan. I've done enough. All these years later, I'm still very sad about this whole thing. I wanted to make a difference. And instead, I was kicked out of the very space I helped build, as well as thrown completely out of the fandom due to no fault of my own, other than the fact that I'm not young enough to fit the vibe. I didn't have the charisma that the inner circle wanted. I was a workhorse. And the thing about workhorses is this: people will tell you how inspiring you are to your face while they laugh at you behind your back. Hard work never pays off. It pains me to say this because I loved this fandom for decades. But when a fandom you love doesn't love you back, you have to leave it. This is why I can no longer be a fan of Jimmy Neutron going forward. The very people I supported, who should have had my back, turned their backs on me and made me feel insignificant. I spun my wheels for over a decade, bringing a show back for nothing. And I received scraps in return for my labor. This is not fandom, folks. That's exploitation. And I will not continue to endure that to be a part of this fandom any longer. This was a painful story to share, but I'm hoping people will view this as a cautionary tale about fandoms in general. On the surface, they may seem happy and positive, but beneath that, they're not all they pretend to be. There is a dark side to every fandom, and Jimmy Neutron is no exception to that. I'm leaving an email address in the description of the video. If you have a story you want to share, but you're not comfortable leaving it in the comment section, feel free to email me and I will respond. As a reminder, I will be moderating comments and weeding out backlash. I won't tolerate it. I have a right to tell my story without prejudice of any kind. The internet is full of a lot of cruelty. Please be kind. Thank you for watching.